So we finished our straps, but that's not what we're out here for. You want these. First thing we're going to do is strip off our tape. So with our tape off, we're going to use some Loctite to put the pressure regulator back on. Slide this guy over here. Loctite our screws back up. Now we would have used lock washers with this, but the plates are a little thicker than the original mounting brackets they sent to by about 2, and they also didn't send any locking washers. We could have provided those, but I just don't think there would be enough left on the screw to get a good bite inside the pressure regulator there. So we're just going to use our Loctite, tighten them down real good. I don't think they'll come off. One down. I'm sure after watching these videos, some of you are thinking, man, this is a rough boat. I mean, it looks like pieces of aluminum were just cut up and L-angle were just kind of hacked up and used. Well, you're real close. There was no store-bought this and store-bought that. They went down to the local lumber yard, grabbed some sheets of plywood, some hinges off some doors, and they went and built the deck. If they needed a drive shaft catch or anything else for that matter, they just had to build it. And being this boat was only built the last couple of years at best, they didn't really build it to make it, you know, something out of like the Geico racing team back then. So they built the boat about 6 times stronger than the average boat, and then they just fit it out to be safe, quote unquote, enough. Not saying the boat hasn't had some major changes to it over the years. It no longer has plywood decks and a plywood console, but the majority of the boat is still original. And anywhere that we could actually keep something, we'd prefer to refurbish it than actually replace it. Keeps to the boat's authenticity. So you won't see the best hardware on here. Wouldn't be in the spirit of the boat. Pretty much everything all the way up to the ends of the drive shafts are original. I mean, we have made other modern changes like lanyards. Get thrown out of the boat, boat goes on. Not a good deal. Those guys had really big balls back then. So what we're doing here is pretty simple. We're going to get rid of this. This is the cheapo deluxe that we have. They can't seem to hold the pressure. And we're going to move this fuel line up this way. And we're going to ditch this. And then we're going to put our new setup underneath the carb here. But we want it underneath of this plate because this is what holds the throttle linkage and it's adjusted the way it needs to be. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off our air cleaner here. And we always keep the Allen key inside our key bob. That way we always have it. That thing would never be used in the racing world. It's too heavy. It does have a K&N filter in it though, which is U.S. Coast Guard approved. Even though back in the day they would have never even thought about that. They probably just would have had stacks. I think this motor, the original setup in this boat actually came with 427 Seidel or Fords with blowers. I'm pretty sure. Could you imagine a big blower nozzle up in here? Crazy. Now these motors are no slouches. One is an authentic Kiekhaefer 482 that's been punched out to a 496 because of block damage. And I believe it's this one is actually a clone of the original motor. And right down to the factory part numbers. I mean, everything was done exactly like the part numbers that came out of that motor back there. And it is a 427 tall block, you know, the truck motor kind of thing, Chevrolet. And they changed the rod configuration around in it and turned it into a 482 with a stroker crank. And from there, like I said, due to block damage and fixing these, we actually punched them out. I believe they're both 60 over, which would give them actually a 495 point something or other. Which is just, you know, it's 495.7 or something like that, so it's closer to 496. So technically they are 496s. But they're still Kiekhaefer motors, right down to the cams, the lifters, everything. Every part, all the way down to the cranks, they're all exactly the way they came from Kiekhaefer back in the day. It would be hard for them to distinguish between the two. So let's get started and tear this thing down. Well, we're starting for good news here. Looks like our studs are actually long enough. Thinking ahead. We're getting lucky. This thing's been ported the hell out of. Pretty damn snazzy for a backyarder. Now comes the fun part, getting rid of the old. We mounted these real well, trying to keep them real stable. And like we said before, you could just do this to it, and you'd watch the needle go from 1 pound to another pound, back to another pound, back to another pound. That's not stable enough for us. Alright folks, that looks kind of snazzy. We used our heat gun here to heat up our line and get it over top of this fitting right here. It is a little thick, but it's like a static fitting now, which is awesome. Then we have our filter down here. We're going to have to replace this. We're not liking this whole scenario. It sat differently the last time. It didn't have a chance to bounce up and down against the intake, so we'll probably go with a metal canister next. Even though they do sell these at U.S. Boat and Marine. So, just going to set this intake up here for now. We still have floats to set on this carburetor. That didn't turn out too bad. Wouldn't you know it? Just heard thunder in the background. Alright, we've already moved on to our back motor. This is kind of a wash, rinse, and repeat kind of thing. We already have the front end closed up, but we're still a bit vulnerable. There's a hole in our motor. You want to hear something wild? I dropped a bolt down a carburetor throat about 30 years ago. To this day, it still paranoids me out to have bolts and nuts and washers and stuff all over top of the carburetor. I think somebody's telling us it's time to go. And as usual, wow, we got as far as putting the carburetor on and tightening it down. After that, so here we are, a slave to the weather once again. Please don't make us wake up one more morning and see that we have no likes or no subscribers. Thank you. If they needed a drive shaft catch or something like that, they just went over and there has been some major changes done over the years. Well, for God's sake. One is the front deck is no longer plywood and it's fiberglass doors. Oh, damn. What the hell are they doing over there? Got these high rises here, which seem to work fine, and they tend to. This is blabbering. I mean, we have made other minor changes. All right, folks. That don't look too snazzy. That didn't go over well. That didn't come out right. Let's start over again.